Hello and welcome everyone to sequencing call number 17. I think this is going to be an absolutely epic call. You can already tell by all of the awesome faces that we see here, almost like a group picture. We have over 120 people on the call. Usually it's a bunch of nerds who join, about 40 to 80, but this is a very unique call. We're going to be extending it to a whole hour and a half. We have about 16 or 17 speakers. And what I'm going to do is actually start by sharing a little presentation on my end just to get things kicked off. So just a second, sorry about this. Okay, so call number 17 is very special because it marks basically a 1-year anniversary for these calls. We've really been grinding. The very first call that we've had was call 0 in February 2024. Please make sure to mute your microphones. Yeah, in less than a year, we've been able to pack 18 calls. And actually, above and beyond these 18 calls, we've packed 4 separate sequencing days across multiple continents. People came to these big events, to these conferences, and spent a whole day just talking about sequencing. And we even had a 5-day sequencing week bonanza in Thailand around DEF CON. Now, this is not meant to be a technical call, unlike the usual calls that we have. This is meant to be more of a social call. And I expect many people to be watching this on YouTube. So I kind of want to zoom out and go back to some of the basics. So we have the world computer, we have Ethereum. What does it give us? It gives us multiple services. And the most basic service is this notion of settlement, where you can, as an L2, tap into the hundreds of billions of dollars of liquidity that Ethereum has to offer. And hopefully in the near future, there will be trillions, and then hopefully eventually tens of trillions of dollars. And if you do consume Ethereum settlement, then you're set to be an Ethereum L2. And that's enough to be part of the family. That's enough to be part of Ethereum. But if you want to go above and beyond, there's 3 more optional services that Ethereum offers, namely data availability, sequencing, and execution. So these are services that are provided by the validators and that you have the option to, if you wish, to basically enhance or customize your L2. And if you consume Ethereum data availability, you're set to be a rollup. So that's the definition. And if you don't consume data availability, you're set to be a validium. And for sequencing, we also have a term which is based. You are a base rollup or a base L2 if you use the sequencing that is provided by the validators. And then finally, we have execution, the EVM, as a layer which is secured by the validators. And if you were to use the Ethereum execution layer, you're set to be native. So that's the mental model that I have. And if you so happen to choose to use all 3 of the optional services, then arguably you've become one with Ethereum L1 itself, right? And Ethereum L1 smart contract is simultaneously based, it's native, and it's consuming L1 data availability. And the lines really start to blur once you have all of these 3 properties. Now, if you want to learn more about all of these things, rollups, base sequencing, and native execution, there's various write-ups. There's Vitalik's rollup-centric roadmap from about 5 years ago, posted on the ETH Magicians. There's an ETH research post on based rollups, superpowers from L1 sequencing. There's a very new research post titled Native Rollups, Superpowers from L1 Execution this time. It was posted earlier this week. And just yesterday, we'd had Vitalik kind of double down on this idea of the rollup-centric roadmap with a post titled Scaling Ethereum L1 and L2s in 2025 and beyond. And I think, one of the key takeaways for me is that we really want L2s to be successful and the rollups to be successful. And that means really aggressively pushing blob scaling, and also kind of finding ways to fix some of the fragmentation issues that we've had. And this is what this call is partly about. Now, the native rollups concept, even though it's been floated around for several years, it's been mentioned in AMAs, it's been mentioned in podcasts, and actually ideas date back, if you go to GitHub, all the way to 7 years ago. I kind of want to tell you what it is, just so that you have a sense, because it's so fresh. So it's basically a form of introspection for the EVM, where the EVM can see itself and allow rollups or L2s to make use of the native virtual machine. And this precompile takes 3 different important inputs, and it returns true or false. And basically, it's trying to make a claim about the execution of this trace. So here we have EVM state roots, a starting state root, which is called a pre-state root, and an ending state root, which is called a post-state root. And what we're claiming when we call this precompile is that the execution of the trace starting from pre-state root will end in post-state root. If you didn't understand that, that's not a problem. But otherwise, this is what it's all about. And it will return true if this is indeed a correct statement, and then it will return false otherwise. And then there's this final input here, which is just used for accounting and pricing of gas. Now, usually you'll hear me kind of shill native rollups and base rollups and rollups in general, but today I actually want to do the opposite. I actually want to celebrate, in some sense, those who choose to explicitly not be rollups and to not be based and to not be native. And this is really, I think, one of the amazing things that the Ethereum community has to offer within its L2. So one example here is MegaETH. So MegaETH chooses to not be a rollup because it uses EigenDA. It chooses to not be based because it has a centralized sequencer. And I also just learned recently that it has a custom tree, a custom EVM tree. So it ditched the Patricia Merkle tree, and that gives them a 10x improvement in write throughput. So this is an example of kind of a very end of the spectrum where they've decided to not take any of the optional services, and that is a fantastic trade-off for them to make. Then we have projects like Starknet that have, a completely different virtual machine to the EVM, Cairo VM, and that gives them, all sorts of benefits. It gives them 10x, maybe 100x even snark friendliness, and that's an amazing thing to have. We have projects like Aztec that are trying to get privacy deep into the virtual machine, and they have things like Noir, which makes them EVM incompatible and therefore non-native, but ultimately this is something worth celebrating within the Ethereum community. We have Eclipse, which is somewhat similar, I guess, to MegaETH, but one thing to mention here is that they use the SVM instead of this EVM with a custom tree. We have Arbitrum that has also been pushing the boundaries of innovation. They have a time boost, which is the sequencer, which is chosen by governance. It's a 14 out of 20 federated sequencer, and it has advantages like ultra low slot times, 250 milliseconds. And it also has the benefit of not reorging. And so some applications like Hyperliquid that have attracted billions of dollars of deposits from Arbitrum, benefit from the fact that there's no reorging and you can have super fast deposits and things like that. And Arbitrum has also innovated with stylus WASM. So within the EVM, they've embedded WASM, and that technically makes them EVM a non-equivalent, but it opens them, it opens a huge amounts of potential innovation with millions of developers who don't necessarily know Solidity who can now make use of Arbitrum. We have Fuel VM that has a UTXO model, and we have Phoenix, which is using really advanced fully homomorphic encryption for their version of the EVM. And the reason why I wanted to celebrate this diversity is because Today, I don't want to be talking about native-based rollups. I want other people to do that job instead. And here is the list of people that we have today. It's a absolutely huge list of amazing people from all sorts of projects, many different rollups. We have about 10 different rollup founders on that list, and we have a lot of infrastructure builders. And so what I want to do today is basically have a two-part conversation. In the first part, I'd like to invite a lot of these rollup founders to talk about native execution or base sequencing, and basically tell them why they're excited about one or the other, and if they have plans for their respective rollups to become based or to become native. And then in part two, we're going to be talking about this new initiative called Fabric, which is basically a way for to standardize a minimal set of APIs and pieces of infrastructure that are required for base rollups to garner a lot of network effects. And then finally, we're going to have Vitalik just close it off with one of his ideas to use native and base rollups to help fund public goods. So on that note, enough talking from me. I'd like to open up the floor to Ben, our very first speaker.
All right, what's going on, y'all? Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Cool. Okay. You know, Justin, I was a little insulted when you said normally this call is a bunch of nerds, but not this time. I'm like, what the hell? But
in terms of attendees, I meant, not the speakers.
Absolutely, and I'm coming here with some slides, you know, so I think that's only fair. And I think it's kind of necessary, guys. We are definitely, I don't know if y'all can feel it in the air, but I think you can. It is wartime. And ultimately, the message I want to share today is that as we think through these future improvements to Ethereum, we cannot sacrifice on these values, but we also have to acknowledge that it is time to make improvements in our ecosystem. And I think that also involves a deeper than before level of collaboration between L1 and L2s. So, you know, it's truly an honor to be here with a bunch of brilliant minds working on these things. I think we have to understand that L2s are the path to bring global adoption, to bring the next billion users to Ethereum. And obviously DA is like table stakes for doing that. We got to keep bumping those numbers up. And I think base and native rollups have a lot of promise to continue to do that. And it's not time for zero-sum thinking. We don't have all the answers. I'm going to try to give as much answers and insight as I can from the perspective of like boots on the ground L2. But we have to collaborate and unify. Like it is time. Okay. So those are my little hype slides. Let's rally the troops. I kind of want to talk about just two things today. I know we've got a lot of other amazing speakers, so I'll go quick, but there's basically two things I want to do here. The first thing that I want to do is like signal optimism, the Optimism Foundation's like wholehearted support for these efforts. Like we need to be able to support these kind of things out of the box. It's like table stakes that stacks like the OP stack support this. But the other thing that I want to do is talk about the reality that that does not guarantee adoption of these things. Product focus is what we need to do if we want to make these things actually work. And yeah, so that's the other thing I want to do is give a boots on the ground perspective of what we think it takes for Ethereum to succeed in these initiatives. Like I said, the OP stack needs to support these things out of the box. Like that is very much clear. And I want to signal again, strongly and loudly that this is the time to move. The Optimism Foundation is here to support with time and resources these initiatives. And I also really think there's a legitimate path, certainly for OP mainnet and probably for a lot of other superchain members to adopt these technologies if and when we make them the excellent products that they can be. And that is like critical. We are not in a moment as a community where we can regress on our products. We need to accelerate our products. What does that mean? We need sub-second. These things need to be cheap, fast. We need sub-cent. These things need to be cheap. We need profitability. These things need to be profitable for the ecosystem participants that are building them. And we need them to be unstoppable. Obviously, the decentralized ethos of Ethereum is not going to go away. And that's some of the key pieces that base and native rollups bring to the table. So we're all in, baby. But what does that actually mean? What do we need to do to have a fantastic experience with base and native rollups? That's the other thing that I want to share. I spent a lot of time talking to a lot of L2 teams, and hopefully I can share some insights on what we think it takes for Ethereum to accelerate, and make these products get adopted and push the L2 and Ethereum ecosystems forward. So I'll start with base rollups. In terms of why these things are important, decentralize the sequencer is like one obvious meme way to say this. Using the ETH validator set, which is very decentralized, is a great way to improve the ordering properties, the inclusion properties of your chain. But to get more concrete, I want to call out like a few of the other things that are relevant to beyond just like the meme of decentralize the sequencer. One thing that's going to be awesome for base rollups is we can lower the deposit time. So right now, L2s basically wait confirmation depths to ingest L1 deposits so that they don't experience reorgs. With base rollups, we can do a better job of this. We can get this to occur really, really quickly and not be as concerned about reorgs. Also, there's obviously the opportunity to improve the atomicity guarantees across chains. And the most obvious one and probably starting point is between L1 and L2, like the ability to do atomic interactions or at least atomic inclusion of transactions on L1s and L2s is really powerful. And even looking beyond that, I think there's space for basically cross L2 sequencer coordination to happen via based sequencing. So these are awesome properties. So how do they win? Because that's still not enough. It means nothing without feature parity. We need sub-second transactions. This is not going to get adoption across the globe if we don't have that. And I think that's basically just saying we need pre-comps, but it doesn't go just as far as we need the transactions to be fast. We need that to be reliable. And effectively, I think what that translates to is like, we can't just have a theoretic ability to confirm transactions in under a second. We need that to be a reliable inclusion and a reliable property of the system. And so basically what that means is that look ahead for base rollups and pre-comps is extremely important. Like we can't be sitting there with 5% of the validators staked and a, whatever percent that works out chance that you're going to get a pre-comp. And otherwise you're just waiting around for the next block or the next validator that gets added to the queue. Another thing that I want to call out is also that we have to think about reorgs a little bit differently in the base context. There's a lot of room for improvement in this regard, but it's important to understand that centralized sequencers, when run well, have very, very, very high uptime requirements. And we have to acknowledge that L1 does have small reorgs sometimes, and we're going to have to figure out a way to deal with that elegantly. Obviously, the stacks can handle the behavior of reorgs effectively, so it's not existential. On the other hand, it is a risk if we suddenly get a lot more frequent reorgs than we're otherwise, used to in a centralized sequencer context. So that's kind of our take on base rollups. It's like, this is awesome, but decentralize the sequencer, while a great meme, cannot detract from the legitimate product strengths that we have as an ecosystem right now. And this is what it means to keep those properties preserved. I think the other thing that I want to really highlight is that base sequencing needs to be profitable for the users and the chains. We need subset transactions, like obviously DA costs and scaling DA is table stakes for that. The other thing we need to acknowledge is that we have the ability with centralized sequencers and longer force inclusion periods to do more amortization than we may be able to do in the base sequencing context. And we also have the opportunities to smooth fees a little bit more for the end users than we do in the normal L2 context. So we need to be accounting for that. And I think the other thing that we need to do is we need to understand that the MEV like landscape, like call it the MEV supply chain, is evolving. And I can tell you, talking to a lot of teams that are considering building chains and thinking through the ordering policies of those chains, that these are not a one-size-fits-all market. There are diverse customer needs, and the more customizability we can bake into the pre-commitments and ordering rules of base sequencing, I think the better chance we have at more and more L2s adopting them. Okay, so that's kind of my thoughts on base rollups. Moving to native rollups, why do these things matter? It is to improve the security model, full stop. And this is critical. Like, not only is this going to help the L2s move faster, but it will also help like accelerate adoption of ETH. Like the reality is right now, using bridged assets in an L2 brings a degree of multi-sig risk that is understandable. We need to prevent hacks, and it's hard to get that right. But it also does mean that it is a barrier to adoption. And hard fork mediated proofs do really meaningfully improve over those existing trade-offs. Like we can make legitimate improvements to these security models by building native rollups. But again, there's a difference between why they matter and how we make them win. So to make them win, we basically, in our perspective, need two things. One thing that we need is we need that security not just to be talk, we need it to be meaningful. So the reality of rollups is that the execute function is just one part of L2 state transition functions. Even if you put aside all the customizability and precompiles, which I'll talk about in a second, the reality is in the OP stack, we call this derivation, but the reality is that the state transition function of L2s has an entire other part of the scope that is kind of everything upstream of actually executing transaction payloads. It's like batch submission, decompressing those batches and turning them into those payloads. So we call that derivation, call it what you will, inboxes. The point is, this is also a security critical part of the path for rollups. And if we don't do it right, then we'll end up having a multi-sig for a bunch of other security critical components, and having carved out just the one execute function is less meaningful. So to make it win, we need to be able to ensure that native rollups can actually provide a legitimate improvement to the security model in a way that is very, very, very real. And I think it's possible, but it's not guaranteed. And then the other thing to say is that rollups help Ethereum win because we are able to innovate more quickly. And native rollups need to supercharge that innovation, not limit that innovation. There's obviously, to Justin's point, there's a diversity of solutions out here, and not everyone is going to be native. But if we want to get native rollups truly adopted by the masses, we need to be able to have a solution which does not stifle innovation and basically regress us to a pace that's closer to L1 innovation, where it has to be a little bit more conservative. So that's kind of my perspective. Hope it didn't take up too much time, but wanted to share what we feel boots on the ground is the perspective of how to make based and native rollups win in the marketplace. Again, I want to just reemphasize, we are here to support this. It is wartime for Ethereum, and Optimism is ready to support. I can see a line of sight to OP mainnet and other chains in the superchain truly adopting both of these things, but we have to get it right. So let's win together. Thanks so much.
Woo, awesome, Ben. Thank you so much for setting the stage here and for bringing in so much energy and enthusiasm for this. And 100% agreed that we need to do it right. It's not just a meme being based or being native. It is about providing actual utility. And there's a bunch of technical issues that we all need to be working on together. And yeah, agree that it is wartime. And in the last 2 weeks, it's definitely been wartime for me. And special thanks to all the coordinators behind the scenes who have helped pull this call off. Next up, we have Nick Johnson from Namechain. If you'd like to come to the stage.
Hello, yes. Pleasure to be here. I am fresh back from 3 days in Cambridge with the Linear team, with representatives from Status and MetaMask and some others, and also from with Justin himself, who was there to try and persuade us about based sequencing and native rollups. And as will come as no surprise to anybody on this call, Justin is an extremely persuasive person. So we deeply believe in censorship resistance and decentralization. It'll be, again, no surprise to anyone who's followed the trajectory of ENS that we have consistently worked to improve ENS's decentralization and our censorship resistance, and to remove human control over things, whenever they're not necessary. Which makes our decision to move to an L2 a difficult one, because up until now, switching to an L2 has necessarily meant a certain amount of extra control over upgradability and so forth, simply so that you can follow along with the L1s, so that you can make upgrades and security improvements and so forth. L2s haven't had the same flexibility in terms of upgrade mechanisms via forks that L1s have. All of that is changed with native rollups, which is one reason they're extremely attractive to us. With a native rollup, we can follow along with the L1's upgrades and improvements, which at the very least reduces the need for human intervention and multi-sigs and DAO voting in upgrades and bug fixes and so forth, and potentially even eliminates the need for it entirely. So we are extremely excited about native rollups. Likewise, because we care deeply about censorship resistance and building a credibly decentralized system, based rollups look extremely attractive to us as well. It's a ground rule for launching Namechain that we are going to have some form of credible forced inclusion, and we would prefer that to be truly decentralized sequencing. So I'm here to announce that Namechain will either launch with based sequencing if we can get the cost per block for based sequencing to a point where it is cost effective for a chain the size of Namechain, or launch with an intention to move to based sequencing as soon as it's viable. Furthermore, while I wish we could launch with native sequencing, as a native rollup, we are aware how long L1 hard forks take. So our most likely route will be we will launch, and then as soon as native sequencing is available, we will be aiming to pivot to that. All of this with the full support of the amazing team at Linear. So you can count us based pilled and native pilled and enthusiastically on board with all of this. Thank you, Justin.
Wow, thank you, Nick. Thank you for sharing this publicly. It's a fantastic to have you on board. And I think base sequencing in particular is an especially good fit for Namechain because Namechain does not require preconfirmations. And so almost all of the complexity of base sequencing stems from preconfirmations. And so hopefully it will be an easy path to get Namechain to launch from day one with base sequencing. But I totally hear your points around costs, and this is something that we will discuss in the Fabric section around having network effects where we can share blobs and share data compression and things like that. Thanks again, Nick. Next up, we have Jesse Pollock from Base. Jesse, the floor is yours.
Hey everybody, it's Jesse. Super excited to be here. I'm the creator of Base. And I want to share 3 things that I'm thinking about that are super top of mind for me. And for those who don't know, Base is Ethereum L2. Yesterday we did something like 130 transactions a second. We're seeing a lot of growth in the ecosystem, and we're excited about continuing to push this forward. The 3 things that are top of mind for me are, of course, starting with the based and native rollups. I think we're really excited about the progress that's being made on the research side and the technology side. In particular, with the kind of like native execute function, it feels like it's both a flexible and powerful tool that we're going to be able to use for Base to make it more connected to Ethereum and increase the security guarantees that it provides. On the Base side, I'm really excited about the interoperability that it can give to other L2s, also about the decentralization that it potentially provides. But I'll also echo Ben's question, or not question, but the opportunity with Base around thinking through how do we kind of make the value share between the L2s and the L1 productive and supportive of kind of profitability on both sides of the ecosystem, because I think that's what's going to lead to a kind of a sustainable equilibrium in the long term. So that's my high level thought on based and native. The second thing is that I really want to emphasize that we are in a moment of inflection, and the world is starting to come on chain at a faster and faster rate. And right now, we are not well positioned to capture that demand. We are planning to do a 2x increase in blobs in the upcoming Petra fork. But when we're looking at the demand coming on chain and we're looking at the timeline to the next increase in capacity, it's too long. What we're projecting on the base side is something like a 10 to 20x increase in demand this year. And with the current timelines for increasing blobs, we're going to get priced out. We're not going to actually have the capacity to serve those users. And that's a really big problem. And I think I just want to emphasize that this needs to be solved if we want Ethereum and Base and other L2s to be the center of the on-chain economy. And so there's urgency in scaling the L1 and the L2 and providing more blobs and making it so that we can actually serve all of these customers who are coming on chain. So that's the second thing. And then the third thing is, I love that we're having this call. I love that we're bringing everyone together. And I also want to remind us that the only thing that matters is delivering products to customers that they love. If we don't do that, none of this stuff matters. And I think candidly, right now, there's still a ton of opportunity to do that better. And when you look around the whole crypto ecosystem, there's actually folks who are leaning into shipping apps every single day, making it possible for new users to come on chain and really seamless experiences. And I think that energy of thinking from a user perspective, first and foremost, and figuring out how do we deliver products that everyday people, everyday businesses, everyday creators, everyday consumers actually want to use, that's the missing piece that we need to keep building the muscle for. Because if we can do that, everything else over time will take care of itself. And so those are really my three messages. It's excitement about based and native. It's urgency around scaling blobs and making sure that we can actually keep up with the capacity that's coming online right now. And then it's a call to action for every single person on this call to not lose sight of the user, not lose sight of the person who's trying to use this new global economy and right now doesn't have the tools, the products that make it easy. And if we can solve those three problems, I think we have a really, really bright future ahead of us. But we have a lot of work to do, and it's going to require all of us buckling down over the next year to deliver it and make it happen. So thanks for having me on the call, and super excited to see what we do in the months and years ahead.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jesse. And totally agreed that just because we're making progress on one thing doesn't mean we need to starve the attention and not make progress on all of the other things. And one of the huge priorities as an ecosystem is to increase DA. Go talk to Francesco, go talk to Dankrat, go talk to Vitalik, go talk to all of the devs that are building out these systems. And help coordinate. One of the things that I mentioned is that we're bottlenecked on coordination. We have so many moving parts. Our ecosystem is so rich and diverse that we need coordinators. And I'm trying to help with that by hiring a couple of coordinators, and hopefully we can switch to the next gear and scale things as much as there is demand. And I just want to highlight a message from DC Builder of WorldChain. He said, same thing for WorldChain. We're going to increase data usage by 10 to 20x. So wholeheartedly agree, Jesse. Let's work in parallel and have separate war rooms. The DA war room is not my war room, but there will be a war room for DA. And I'm very optimistic about that as well. Thank you, Jesse. Next up, we have Tomasz from Nevermind, who is working on Surge. Welcome, Tomasz.
Hi, everyone. Great to see all the familiar faces, all the new faces. New for me, probably. So definitely Nevermind is always happy to support all the initiatives in Ethereum, give space for researchers, for developers to always feel that there is the engineering team that will build with them together, to feel that there is a lot of acceleration in Ethereum, that it never feels like just because of the lack of engineering acceleration, we have to stop some initiatives. And based rollups and the native rollups, so this is all what we are super excited about. I will be helping to build, to standardize, to explore with. So Surge is one of our initiatives. It's for building the template for base rollups that our customers will be able to use, that will help our customers to deploy enterprise solutions with, to deploy fund solutions with. We ourselves will be experimenting with Surge and with base rollups and with Fabric as well. So all of this is to also bring Ethereum to experimentations on agentic space, like agentic AI. I think that we're talking a lot about users. We'll also talk about agents very soon. And I think we cared a lot about Ethereum being seeing that the rollups can come with with Ethereum token as like with Ether as the main currency there, burning Ether, be super aligned. We are super excited to actually think that we can take all the experience of building with different layer 2s. We built with Starknet, we built with Gnosis, Linea, we built with Flashbot's team on MEV. We support Base, we support Optimus in Nethermind client. And obviously in Surge, we based everything on the Tycho code base and Tycho ideas from all the base rollups. So we love to continue all of this, to come with all this experience, to help teams think about how to standardize it, how to accelerate it, because I think that many of us, when we think standardize, we start to feel it doesn't mean accelerate, but Dynamite always felt that it's all about accelerating Ethereum to more usage, more users, more friendly packaging, more friendly for users, but also for those enterprise users that need to feel that there is support, stability, and that they feel welcome in the Ethereum ecosystem. They can bring big money, so more money flows. So actually more users can feel like there's always liquidity. There's always someone that cares about security, and then the entire chain feels permissionless, open, secure. And we have that collaborative spirit from developers, engineers, from users. So yeah, I feel it will be a great experience to work together on this initiative, like many others in Ethereum space. And base rollup feels super aligned, native rollups feel super aligned, but also like forward experimentation looking, or even like not experimentation, but I feel simply that it's very, very obvious direction. One of many, but this one is very obvious and the one that's worth supporting. So super happy to work with everyone. Thanks.
Amazing. Thank you, Tomasz. And I guess this is a good contrast with Base, right? Where Jesse was emphasizing all of the users and the applications, and you're emphasizing the infrastructure. You're building Surge as a technology template to show the world how to build these based and native rollups. And I guess Nevermind as a consultancy is here to help, and they'll have a lot of expertise that they can share on that topic. Thank you so much, Tomasz. Next up, we have Stephen. Now, unfortunately, it's Shabbat right now, so Stephen couldn't make it in person, but he has left a video recording or voice recording, which I haven't yet heard, but hopefully we'll be able to play it to the audience. Stephen from Arbitrum. Drew, do you think we can play it?
Yeah, let me try this. It's not me, it's
Hey everyone. Hey everyone, it's so great to be here today. Although I guess I'm technically not here. But thank you so much to Justin for giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts in this format. And we are joined here live today by other members of my team at Offchain Labs who can definitely answer any questions about our thoughts on these really important issues, and also participate in any follow-up discussions. So anyway, let me start with sharing my thoughts. I want to actually, reflect on Vitalik's blog post from this morning, which I thought was really, really fantastic, and set up this, the stage for this tension between these really two important goals in the Ethereum ecosystem. On the one hand is the desire, or maybe actually even more than the desire, the real need for us to have an Ethereum together, that the L1 together with all of its L2s feels like a single unified environment. And on the other hand, though, is embracing the diversity of Ethereum developers, researchers, and users, and embracing the innovation and experimentation that has come, from that. If you look at Ethereum has dozens of core development teams across the different layers, independent teams, independently funded teams, and no other ecosystem can say this. And, I think that's something that's really, really important and really valuable as well. And I think that's actually, if I had to pick one thing that makes the Ethereum community unique, it is that diversity that we have, and we never want to lose that. And why would we lose that? Well, there is a tension here, because if you only had a single development team, or even a single development spec, or even a single implementation, it becomes a lot easier to think about unification. And that's what Vitalik calls the shortcut way, where Ethereum can just sort of take over and build scaling in the L1. But I think we lose a lot by doing that. If you look at Ethereum innovation on the execution layer over the years, obviously the EVM and Solidity came from the Ethereum community, but so did other innovations like Starkware's Cairo, like Fuel's Fuel VM, like the FHE VM from the Phoenix team, and like our very own Stylus. Arbitrum Stylus is the VM that allows you to write smart contracts in Rust and C and C++. So how do we build interoperability, but also not stifle innovation and not, discourage people from experimenting and trying new and different things? And I think the core answer is really working together and coordinating. So the very fact that we're here on this call today trying to figure out these issues is extremely, extremely important. And then it's, some of these are technical, concrete technical steps that we can take, like chain-specific addresses is a really, really good one. But others are just the commitment to coordinate and find that shared ground and that common core that we can work together on and have that desire to build interoperable ecosystems with one another. And I think that communication and that coordination is really, really important. So how does it connect to native rollups? Well, to be honest, a day or two ago, or up until a day or two ago, I was pretty bearish on the idea of native rollups because my understanding was that, it was very binary, that if you wanted to participate in this, you have to basically say, we are going only to be, Ethereum equivalent and sign on to this particular tech stack. And it would stifle that innovation, which again, I do think might make interop easier in the short run, but I don't think is a good trade-off in the long run. I think we want that innovation. But, Vitalik in the post really spoke about this extendable version, this expandable version, which I think is absolutely fantastic, where, the way I understand now, and I think is a fantastic vision, is a native rollup is us finding that common ground, us saying, hey, let's not all reinvent the wheel. Let's not all re-implement, the same features in slightly different ways. So we just create A, redundant work, but also B, difficulty in trying to connect these components afterwards. Let's find that common ground. Let's factor it out, like we factor out, software and code. Let's factor it out and let's, say we can agree on this shared standard, even this shared implementation, and even better, get layer one support for these features that we all need. And figuring out what that core and that nucleus is going to be an important problem. But and some may stop there. Some may say, okay, that's all that I need. All I want is those core features. But other rollups may say, we want to innovate on top of that. And we want to, as Vitalik said, bring our own provers to, do the diff on top of that. And that to me is a really fantastic vision. How can we work together to find those common core features and build a native rollup, as you will, that has that core that we can all use and build on top of? Now, I do think it's a fantastic vision, but it's also early in the research phase to me. I have a lot of questions that I think we all probably need to work together to answer, which is how do we build this? How do we build it in a way that's useful and advantages, and certainly doesn't disadvantage any current roll-up teams? How do we build it in a way that we can all get behind it and it works with all of our tech stacks? I think these are important research questions, and I'm very, very excited for them and excited for this direction. And how do we actually, turn this vision into reality is something we're going to have to work very hard to do. And we at Option Labs are very excited to contribute to this research in this direction, because ultimately, I think, despite our differences, every single person on this call today wants Ethereum to win, wants Ethereum to continue to be the dominant and best layer one execution environment for smart contracts, for building rollups, and for all blockchain applications. And I think that core shared belief is going to empower us to work together to say, how do we find that common ground? And, working together on researching and understanding and building a native rollup spec that we can all benefit from, to me, would be a fantastic endeavor. So thank you all again for listening to me today, and excited to hear all the great things that come out of this call.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Stephen. That was a recorded message. It was not Drew speaking. It was Drew is just helping out with the recording. And yes, I wholeheartedly agree that we need to cherish and celebrate the diversity that Ethereum has, and we should try and incorporate it in things like the precompile. There's ways to have customability around the precompile. You can have your custom sequencers, your custom fee tokens, governance tokens, public goods funding, and there's also opportunities to potentially extend the EVM. So one idea, if we go down the route of ZK RISC-V, is to expose RISC-V as a virtual machine, and then you can start writing your custom precompiles in RISC-V. And yet another idea is to have some sort of a hook where when you hit a precompile that is not understood by the EVM, you somehow fall back to a different proof system, or a different fraud game, whatever it is that's specified by the application. And that might be one way to take Arbitrum, which is currently not EVM equivalent because of Stylus, because of WASM, and have them gracefully fall within the framework of native rollups. Thank you again, Stephen, for your recorded message. Next up, we have Hayden. Now, unfortunately, Hayden got sick recently. He has the flu, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but one thing I will say is that I actually spent several days with him not long ago, and he, from my perspective, he was extremely enthusiastic about native rollups. And I think the reason, and this is me speaking, not him speaking, is that he wants maximum immutability and security. If you look at Uniswap today, it's essentially governance free from the user perspective. Like there's this one switch, the famous fee switch, which is under some sort of governance control, but everything else is essentially fully immutable. And so this notion of native rollups, I think, is super exciting for Hayden. And he seemed to suggest, but again, I'd like to invite him maybe to the next call to discuss this, that he'd like to contribute intellectually, with resources, with capital, whatever it is, to help accelerate this. And I think he would agree as well with the theme of today's presentations, is that we are in war mode, like we are shifting gears and moving much faster. Now, one thing that I do want to highlight about Unichain is that while it might become native, I don't think it will ever become based. And the reason is that Unichain is a DEX, and like one of the key innovations is to try and extract the MEV from arbitrage and give it back to LPs. And in order to do that, you need to move away from the base model. So if you have an extremely good reason for moving away from base sequencing, then go ahead by all means. This is what Unichain is doing, and it's super exciting to see. Okay, next up after Hayden, who unfortunately couldn't make it, is Fede from Lambda class. Fede, the floor is yours.
Hi, I'm Fede from Lambda. For those that don't know us, it's a startup studio that has been working in crypto since 2017 we're very Ethereum focused because we like a lot that Ethereum is a protocol and not a company. We already own companies, so we love the focus of Ethereum in decentralization on being community oriented. So for the last 3 years with Lambda, we have been building many of the main L2s with our partners. Our main focus until recently was on ZK L2s. I'm pretty happy with introduction you did, Justin, because one of the things that happens is that I have a very good relationship with many of the CEOs and CTOs of these L2s we have been working with. I was worried of what would happen if if like the new rollups become based on native, what will happen with the previous one. So I think it's a very good idea to present it as you did. Ethereum provides a different amount of services, rollups can choose which of those services they can use. I think it's very important that we don't alienate we continue supporting everybody that choose Ethereum I mean, like that's the core idea of Ethereum. Like it's a place for everyone, and we have to support the different use cases and the different things that everyone wants to do with Ethereum. So a year ago, thanks to Team Baco's support on the EF, we started working. They were super open. We had a lot of questions. We started working on our consensus client. It was more like an MVP for us to learn. We did it with 2 people. In 6 months, we got something working because it was not a business thing. It was more like for research and learning. It took us a little bit more. Last week, we managed to be live on Holesky without any big issues. It's something we built with only 2 engineers. during the course of a year. 6 months ago, for business reasons, we started creating a minimal L1 execution client that, from our point of view, will be very interesting. It will add different things that many of the clients that exist nowadays don't focus on. It's already snap thinking, if I'm not wrong, it's with Haleski too. And we're proving it too for L2 with different risk 5PM, like SP1 on risk 0. 2 months ago, we started working with Drew on Commit Boost. We're super happy to have been included on that effort. Thanks, Justin, for introducing us to Drew. It has been an amazing experience to learn more about the Ethereum internals and to accelerate Ethereum. So related to this talk, a few months ago, I shared with the community on X or Twitter that we will create an L2 called Rogue. The core idea of Rogue is that it is an L2 that has no VCs, no team allocation, has a fair lunch for everyone. From my point of view, it's very close to how Bitcoin on Ethereum started. I'm not interested in creating a company out of Rogue. It's the other way around. Like we want it to be community owned. In the long term, I hope not to having any access to the verifier. We want to create a council of people that manage that. We want to create something that is bigger than our company. It's not a product. It's more like the completely decentralized L2. And that's why for it being based and also native is going to be super useful. Like since I read about base rollups, for me it clicked in 2 seconds that's what we wanted. We wanted the interop on the ability to have full decentralization. Since the project is not going to be managed by a team, we wanted to it should be live all time around. On one of the core premises of Rogue, in some way, in this sense, it's a little bit closer to Bitcoin, is that the tokens are mined by the proving. You have to prove it real time on the tokens get generated every Ethereum block on whoever submits there will be either an auction or either it will be the first person submitting a proof of the block of the L2 will get the tokens. So that's one of the rollups that we're doing. The second one that I have never spoken too much, and I will do today, I did tell, I think, this to Justin and to Vitalik at some point. We're working with different. I am from Argentina. We exist thanks to Ethereum. Ethereum has clear product market fit. We pay our employees, we pay our partners thanks to Ethereum on stable coins. We wouldn't exist without Ethereum. That's something that many people that come from Europe or the US don't realize. Many of these developers and engineers all around the world exist, or their companies exist thanks to the payment systems that Ethereum enabled. So we're working, since we're from an emerging market, we're pretty well connected culturally with different emerging markets across Africa, Central Asia, on Southeast Asia. And we have been talking, and I have been traveling a lot with different countries, governments that are very interested in, obviously, in blockchains on rollups. On one of the cool things they kept on telling me was that they were worried that centralized rollups would be an issue. So they really like ZK, they really like Ethereum. For them, on talks I had, it's obvious that Ethereum is the most decentralized and fair community on blockchain, but something like Base was missing. So ETHREX, the client we created for Rogue, is going to be used for these different national-wide initiatives. I cannot share too much for now, but hopefully in the next few weeks or months, I will be able to share more. So those are the 2 places where we hope to use for sure-based rollups and very likely to the native feature.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Fede. And I didn't realize that you were building a second based rollup. And the neutrality aspect really resonates with another thing that I've heard, is that if we're going to bring nation states and institutions and big money, think trillions of dollars, tens of trillions of dollars, we can't have these security councils. We just can't have bugs. We can't have governance that can just steal everything with low economic security. We need to have this strong trustlessness, world security or World War III grade security. And I'm hoping that we can basically extend all the properties of the L1 to the L2s and have these L2s really blossom with full security. Fede, thank you so much for taking the stage. Our final speaker in this first section is Ye from Scroll. Ye, the floor is yours.
Sure. Thanks for introduction, and glad to be here. I'm Ye, co-founder of Scroll. So for those who have not, Scroll is a layer 2 solution. They could, with full EVM compatibility, running production for over a year. And for us, base sequencing is an important way. Our view is that it's an important way to stay in the same economic zone with Ethereum. And because we realize that, even for a lot of applications, even for meme coins, and having direct access to a very deep liquidity pool is very, very powerful. And it's important to have some level of interop with layer 1. And clearly, base sequencing has the potential to provide some guarantee for that. And there may be some kind of really good regulation hedge to kind of make the sequencing become more permissionless. But also because we have been running for over a year, so we are very, very practical and about where we are and how we can together to kind of use a more programmatic way to get there. So I think there are some problems which we identify for base sequencing. And the first thing is fragmentation stuff. The fragmentation, I'm not talking about liquidity fragmentation or different different layer 2 fragmentation. But I'm talking about fragmentation in terms of design philosophy, because people's perception for layer 2 is OP optimism based, or arbitrum is just optimist zero op. But if you look into detail, their design philosophy is very, very different, how the reorg happens, and whether it's layer 2 reorg with layer 1 or not, whether you use for ZK with state diff versus raw data, and some bridge design, forking choices, and some derivation function. So it's actually different raw framework really differ a lot. It's not you can categorize as it's just a layer 2 with OP or ZK. It's just the proof system is just one part, but the framework actually matters a lot. So the fragmentation will create a lot of problem on how those different rollups can interop with each other. So I think that's one big problem if we really want to unify this effort to create a less fragmented future. So that's one thing. And also that's why I think I talked with Justin months ago on we need to have at least a shared high level design philosophy if you want to have anything unified. I'm not talking about spec or implementation, but at least some high level alignment on layer 2's behavior under certain situation. That will be great to create a more unified world. And second thing on base rollup is the shared infra, shared blobs, proofs, and so it's and right now it's very costly. So we actually need to have those kind of networky, if those infra and network effect built to kind of be practical enough to launch a base rollup. So from our view, with all those concerns, like I mentioned, we want to support some research on the shared stack, and maybe if there's some value aligned teams who want to kind of build on top of Scrolls SDK to make that a base, and happy to support that effort. But that's our kind of standpoint. The first thing is trying to align and support this effort on this kind of shared philosophy. And then if there are some other teams who want to kind of work on Scroll SDK to make that become base, so we are happy to support that. And then Scroll mainnet, we will see whether base rollup will really become practical enough to kind of but we are open to become base, but it actually need to work and work super well in practice, because right now scaling and the product and user still matters more. So that's for base sequencing. And second, for native rollup, it's always a super interesting idea, and it's super ideal for all rollup to remove the multi-sig, which I think Solana and other people complain about, it's a multi-sig and it's not secure. However, again, we are also realistic about where we are. So there are still some hurdles, really fast ZKVM prover, and how you handle deposit and other type of transactions that are not part of the EVM state transition, but part of the rollup state transition and state transition function and gas modeling. So they are some of the hurdles. And also I actually agree with what Steven mentioned, rollup eventually need to go ahead, move faster in terms of adding new features, AA and maybe EOF and something like that. So I think so there are some kind of idea of how you can potentially do both like in native rollup with other stuff, but we want to see like, how that can happen. But before that, we will like to support this effort, we will like keep working on like real-time proving with ZKVM to kind of like support this, back this up. But like, we will right now, like we are focusing on like, performance and tons of new features to massively improve the UX and depth for user and developers. So that's our angle. And in the upcoming upgrade, like we are also like, basically, I think we are the first one, probably like, moving from a very customized ZKVM and coming to moving to a more generic ZKVM. We have built the first version with Axiom called OpenVM to kind of accelerate this effort. And we believe like, we have like the potential, like, it can become the fastest and the first one to become like really real-time proving for layer 1 block to make, based or like, native rollup happen. And and also like in the upcoming upgrade, we will become even more compatible with the layer 1 by upgrading our Merkle potential tree. Initially, we used to be a type 2 with ZK tree, but we will upgrade to the same as layer 1, the MPT, and also ZKVM to like unblock the last hurdle to kind of, to a lot of new features. So yeah, that's basically where we are, and yeah, excited to be here. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah. I want to highlight a couple of things that you said. One, which you said very much in passing, was a legal hedge. And the reason I want to highlight it is that behind closed doors, a lot of teams tell me about this, that they're worried about their security committee or their governance being some sort of a legal attack point. And teams members, they don't want to go to prison. They don't want to be fined. They don't want to be in court for years and years and years fighting these battles. And so from their perspective, I think base sequencing and native rollups give them this kind of legal hedge, this legal peace of mind. The other thing that I wanted to highlight that really resonated with me is this idea of homogeneity, right? If we have completely unstandardized innovation, then we'll have this combinatorial explosion of possibilities, and it becomes like that much harder to abstract everything away. So one way to come to standards is to pick shelling points. And for these shelling points to be really, really strong, credible neutrality is something that really helps with the coordination. And as such, base sequencing and native execution, if anything, they're just like extremely credibly neutral shelling points. And so they will help remove that complexity. And so maybe they're not, in addition to being valuable in and of itself from a utilitarian perspective, there's also this meta utility in the sense that they act as a shelling point. And yeah, I think this is a fantastic transition to the next section, because part 2 of this call is about Fabric. It's all about coming to convergence around a minimal set of standards. And I'd like to invite Drew to present his latest project, Fabric.
Thanks, Justin, and everyone for listening. Yeah, Drew have been working on a public good called Commit Boost for the last year. And before I get into Fabric, in no way am I stepping away from Commit Boost. I'll still be probably annoyingly ping majority of you on the call to help support or test and a variety of things. So this is really just an extension of that, and using the sort of construction we've got together around Commit Boost to work on other projects, which is Fabric. It stands for Fabric to accelerate based rollup infrastructure and connectivity. And really, I want to highlight up front before we talk about why the timing's right, what it is, what we've already got done, where we're headed. Just want to highlight Fabric is not a revolutionary idea. It's just an evolution of a lot of work that tons of teams on this call have done. And the idea and the reason we picked the name Fabric is it's really just a shelling point to coordinate and hopefully help stitch together some of the fragmentation we see either lurking or already out there in Ethereum, and really pour an accelerant on the coordinate effort to align a lot of these things that teams have already highlighted, uncued by me. But why the time is now for Fabric? We've seen two things take place, and really this has been through conversations since Chiang Mai, but L2s, they've been working for years, flourishing, almost hitting capacity, but they are, as you've seen on this call, starting to lean towards potentially being based, as long as the infrastructure is built right and there's a benefit. And so that's one side of it. The other side is there are a lot of teams that have been working on based rollups for the last year. I see in the chat, there's some teams that have just been hyper-focused on all this. And what that's allowed for is us to get to a place where we have some understanding of how we're going to implement this and potential places where we can agree to standardize, where it benefits not only the teams building these things, but the overall Ethereum ecosystem. And we have 2 base rollups already in production today, so we've learned a lot just from that. The other thing is, over the last week and a half, we've started introducing this concept, and there is this strong general consensus that, and you've heard it on this call, that there needs to be an effort like this under the right parameters. And threading that needle will be a bit difficult, but that's what we're hoping to help accelerate. And so what is Fabric? It's 4 parts, mostly coordination, some development, but it's a coordination to fill the gap where public goods and standardization across the base stack makes sense. And the idea here is to get folks in a room that are key stakeholders for this and get them to agree on a handful of items that they think should be standardized and can be standardized, and get them to agree to build their roadmaps around that as this progresses. And so that's the key component we work on. But we're also going to have developer resources. Now, the point of the development is just minimal viable implementations of these standards to serve as a reference. We don't plan to ship a roll-up or a framework. It's just minimal viable implementations. The idea is, we can work with, I'll just pick on Ye because he talked last, but we could work with Scroll, and they could have, they'll pay, have some of their team or pay someone to build like a production ready implementation using the framework or using Fabric as reference implementation. So we in no way want what we're doing to go into production, but teams to build around that. And so that's the main focus areas of what Fabric is. What's already been done, unbeknownst maybe a lot of folks on this call, but there has already been efforts that are important to base sequencing that already are getting standardized. And this is the Universal Registry Contract, which is out there. Teams are working on implementing and providing feedback. And then there's an extension of the PBS pipeline to support pre-comps that's been worked on and agreed on by a bunch of teams. Teams are already working on that in implementation. And of course, there's a sidecar to allow validators to issue pre-comps called Commit Boost, which is getting run in production and getting supported. So there's already those things. And then the other thing I'll say is we've had conversations with folks. 20 plus teams have said they'll contribute to Fabric and are willing to be part of this. That's its own shelling point in itself. So what's next? Many of you seen the Notion doc we got together. We wanted to wait till after this call to publish it on ETH Research, but that's coming. We wanted to get all the feedback we could before we create the canonical post around that. And then we'll start meeting with teams to get their views on where do we think we can standardize, and then get everyone together and say, hey, this is what we found. These are the handful of items we think we can execute on, and then we'll have some code probably ready by then too to get people to start responding to. So that's a little bit about Fabric. Hopefully you'll learn more about it and the different teams and how they're involved on the following talks, but appreciate everyone's time, and I'm super excited to help push this forward.
Drew, thank you so much for presenting Fabric. And I think everyone here on this call agrees that there needs to be some sort of credibly neutral entity that will do the coordination. And it's fantastic that we have, Drew, that is like extremely credibly neutral outside of the Ethereum Foundation. He has this not-for-profit entity that I believe he has set up. He has no association with any of the L2s or anything like that. I think he just wants to help Ethereum win in the most credibly neutral way possible. Fantastic. Next up, we have Matthew Edlin. So very similar to Stephen, unfortunately, Matthew couldn't make it in person. And the reason is that he's at school. And actually, I think he's taking exams right now. Matthew is 17, he's still at school. And so he left a recorded message for us, which we'll hear very shortly.
Again, this is Matthew, not Drew.
Hello, everyone. I'm Matthew, or M-Team, and I'm the co-founder, chief product officer, and head of strategy at Spire Labs. Spire is building a base rollup stack, which we call the base stack, with support for next-generation composability, sensitive resistance, and pre-conf integration features. Technically, we are a fork of the OP stack with major modifications to sequencing, finality, and the OP node software. We are live on internal DevNet today and plan to be ready for mainnet with limited features in early Q2. Throughout the rest of the year, we plan to focus our efforts on TE approving, advanced composability designs, blob sharing, shared settlement, shared deposits, and robust incentive compatible sequencer election. Our goal by the end of the year is to offer synchronous atomic cross-chain contract calls between a base layer 2 and Ethereum mainnet, all with a seamless developer experience. We are especially excited about base sequencing because of its potential to enable synchronous composability through coordinated sequencing with layer 1 MapBoost block builders, all without sacrificing a fast user experience. Our other product is called a Preconf router, and it serves as a RPC abstraction layer for easy user and wallet integration with preconfs across chains. You can read more about the base stack and the Preconf router at spire.dev. Personally, I'm coordinating the native rollup calls and working on educational and pilling resources to encourage the development of native rollups and encourage a layer 1 hard fork that includes an execution engine opcode as soon as possible. Spire is devoting developer hours to researching native rollups and how they can work with base rollups as well, called ultrasound rollups. And we plan to be ready for launch with native rollups as soon as Ethereum upgrades to support them. We believe that a unified set of standards for the development of base rollups will lead to greater efficiency in development timelines, ultimately bring down costs for users, and establish a composability zone that includes a diverse set of execution environments. That is why we are excited to announce our support for the Fabric effort and our intention to lead standardization efforts, like using the base stacks code as a reference implementation for the Fabric repo. And we are also excited to announce that we will fully open source the base stack by February 28th. Thank you.
Wow, I hadn't listened to this message, yeah, super exciting that they're open sourcing. This is a team that has really hyper focused on base sequencing, you know, they've done all of this work modifying the OP stack, and you know, now we have multiple you know, players from the superchain that are considering base sequencing, and so maybe, you know, we can all as an ecosystem make use of this work and learn from it as soon as it's open sourced. And again, like Spire, just like many other teams, are gathering so much technical expertise to actually pull this off. They're not building applications themselves, they are technology providers. Thank you, Matthew, again, and great to see you in the chat listening while you're at school. Next up, we have Daniel Wang from Tycho.
Hey, Justin. Hey, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Yeah, so I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO from Tycho, but I serve actually like a CTO in Tycho because I read code. Justin, I want to thank you for giving this technology a name and researching in it, and you know, presenting the idea in conferences. A big fan. I thank you for all the effort to bring base rollup as like one of the hot topics in Ethereum ecosystem. We launched Tycho mainnet in last May, so we learned a lot from the you know, from the mainnet launch. There are still a lot of issues to be solved. It's far from being perfect. We know that, so we started to work with partners. We will work with Nethermind for pre-confirmation, and also thanks to you, Justin, for researching in pre-confirmation. So we have something to you know, to guide us. We also work with Gattaca for pre-confirmation. Previously, we thought we need two different solutions, but gradually those solutions merge into one. We have also just formed a partnership with OpenZeppelin, and we want to build a better rollup solution. So we don't have a name for it yet. So next month, we are going to come together to brainstorm face-to-face to set up, to start this new project. So, you know, both teams, OpenZeppelin and us, and even Nethermind, they're also interested. So we are all willing to, I cannot speak for them, but I'm speaking for Tycho. We are willing to contribute to the Fabric project, to follow standards, to make sure, you know, we can divide and conquer all the problems, rather than like working on something ourselves to offer the whole solution. Yeah, so that's something I want to share. Another thing I want to share is a challenge that we are facing, and I think probably Ethereum Foundation researchers should have a governance like a workshop or something, for a task force to make sure, you know, we can just research in base rollup technology. We don't want to own the governance stack. We don't want to have different, you know, DAOs to govern different base rollups. This is something that should be offered as a common surveys. We are happy to give control, give ownership back to a DAO sponsored or supported by Ethereum Foundation, or collectively by all of us. We don't want to govern it ourselves, because if we control the DAO, if the DAO is not designed well, if the DAO is not good enough, then the rollup it probably is not good enough for the long run. So that's something I want to share. So maybe new rollup mainnet, they don't have to worry about this, because I think the native rollup may come later, much later in production. I think that's everything I want to share. Thanks.
Thank you, Daniel. And yeah, I guess Tyco is like one of two projects where the rubber really meets the road, because they are live on mainnet. They're learning a lot every single day, every single week, and they're partnering with all sorts of people with expertise, which is great to hear. There's the Nevervine team and this new team on the block, Open Zeppelin, that is also helping out Tyco, which is great to hear. And I totally hear your concern to not have ownership over infrastructure needlessly, because ownership is liability, and really you'd want this ownership to be in the hands of some sort of a credibly neutral institution. And in some sense, I think this is what Drew is partially trying to achieve with Fabric. Thank you so much, Daniel. Next up, we have Kubi from Gattaca.
Hey everyone, I'm Kubi from Gattaca. So we are an infrastructure builder mainly focused around L1 block production, at least historically. And we have been excited about base preconfirmations for a while now, specifically because it just has the promise of better UX and response times that outperform like high-performing ecosystems like Solana. And doing this while leveraging the L1 proposers is just super exciting to us. And also more recently, native rollups. Thanks, Justin. Obviously better security, but specifically also in the context of sequencing, it just vastly simplifies synchronous composability. So historically, or we've basically been contributing to this collaborative effort across multiple teams to make based sequencing a reality for over a year now. Back in Zoo Berlin, we hosted one of the DevNets, to Helder at ECC, to like working with a lot of teams to actually land the first preconfirmation on mainnet. We have been one of the contributors to Commit Boost. We have been part of this larger standardization effort to essentially come to an agreement of what the L1 block production pipeline needs to look like in order to make preconfirmations a reality. And more recently also working with a bunch of rollups to think about a practical roadmap and steps in order to transition to become base if you're already operating at scale. We'll actually be releasing a research post next week. All of that to say, we have been contributing a lot to the preconfirmation movement in the past, because we think it's very important, and very supportive of Fabric, because as the movement is getting a lot more momentum, there's even more of a need to have better coordination, and that's the only way we actually can make it a reality. So very much supportive of Fabric overall, and also very committed to keep contributing to make it a reality.
Thank you, Kubi. And for those who don't know, by the way, Gattaca is the entity behind the Titan builder, one of the very top builders. They have a ton of expertise in the MEV pipeline. They know it inside out. And this is super helpful in the context of base sequencing, because you're getting your hands dirty immediately with the MEV pipeline. Another thing that I wanted to highlight, which Kubi hinted at, is this incremental strategy to get incumbent rollups with centralized sequencers to gradually have a pathway towards decentralization and potentially base sequencing. And long story short, the way that I see it is that it's a two-step process. Step number one is that you add pre-confirmations to the centralized sequencer. So if you take a project like Base, they have a 2-second slot time. That's actually a long slot time. And what you can do is have the centralized sequencer make promises about transactions that they will include in their slot when the slot boundary comes along. And just like Base, is incrementally increasing the gas limit every single week, they could incrementally every week just reduce the UX latency. And ultimately, you can bring it down to 1 ping time plus a little bit. And I think this little bit is on the order of 10 milliseconds. So if you compare that to Solana, which has these 400 millisecond tick durations, it's about 40x smaller tick durations that we can achieve on Ethereum, which is super, super exciting. And once we've de-risked these pre-confirmations and we have integrations with wallets and we can do tip pricing and all of these things, then it's forward compatible with decentralized sequencing, and in particular base sequencing, which has these really long slot durations of 12 seconds. But it doesn't matter that they're 12 seconds, because from a UX standpoint, it's ping latency plus 10 milliseconds. And so the user doesn't even realize that the slot duration is 12 seconds. Kubi, thank you so much for presenting this. Next up, we have Amir from Puffer.
Hi, thank you, Justin, for organizing the call. Amir, the CEO at Puffer. Really, Puffer right now has 3 products that are live. One is this, what we call today LRT, but I really like to call it like an ETH derivative product that provides yield for users. And also we have been working on Puffer Unify, a base rollup SDK stack that is going to be used across many future rollups, base rollups, or apps that are preferring to become a rollup. Also, we're working on Unify AVS, which is a pre-conf AVS, providing economic security for this pre-conf network. Actually collaborating with Kubi and Lorenzo. I like the name that you guys put instead of Titan. But yes, collaborating with them on that effort as well. What I'd like to talk about here, since we're in the social call, I'd like to more talk about a story of how Puffer became this. You guys might wonder, Puffer, when we started, we were not this. And probably paint a picture of how this journey ended up making us move to this direction. When we started, nobody was talking really about blob space. It was the company started 2 or 3 years ago. The initial concerns were more about the economic side of things, about the centralization issue on Ethereum. So we moved to actually provide better permissionless opportunity for anyone to run a node on Ethereum more efficiently with less ETH, and later extended it to actually tap into EigenLayer to provide these validators more yield. Once we scaled, we moved to bigger scale. We were planning to actually adhering to the rollup centric roadmap and also provide more efficient user experience for our users. When we were trying to choose a rollup at that time point, there was no dominant rollup. We were sort of confused. Which rollup are we going to pick between? In this journey, it was like this. There was Internet 1.0, which was Ethereum. And there were 8 other Internet 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4. And we were sort of confused which one to pick, because Internet 1.4 told us, if you picked us, you have no way to then go to Internet 1.3. If you want to go there, we have these sort of messengers, which are centralized bridges, kind of like smugglers. They can only bring messages there, and you have to trust them to bring the message there. It was non-ideal for us. That's where Justin talk about base rollups was very compelling to us. And we thought that was almost a no-brainer to create an infrastructure that all of these versions of internet, which are rollups or L2s, can talk to each other, can interoperate. So we started an effort to focus more on base rollups. We started more development. Currently, Puffer Unify is a fork of Tycho Stack. Shout out to the Tycho folks who actually delivered the first rollup. We worked on a little bit of improvements around it, including we just worked on a TEE prover that works based on TDX. We believe to get to real-time proving, maybe ZK can become faster in the future years, but real-time proving can be done more pragmatically if, let's say, we use multi-TEE manufacturer multi-provers. This can take away the manufacturer issue or the trust, at least bringing us closer to this real-time proving system. That's where we are today. We are exploring this SDK to also use OP stack in the future versions as well, to actually like see if we can actually make it more like robust, maybe a combination of what is live today, Taiko or OP. Now, in this effort, we heard about Fabric. What excited us was now, if anybody is working on a base rollup, they don't have to worry about which version of the base rollup is going to be interoperable with the other one. That's why Fabric makes so much sense. If we just create a sort of a pattern, a standard that these rollups can be built, then we don't have to figure out how these things interoperate down the line. So that made a lot of sense for us to support Fabric. So thank you, Drew, for actually providing that proposal, because it really addresses a lot of our worries down the line at a later time. Now, also, if you look at today, a lot of the teams are working on provers. Provers of different versions, like ZK EVM provers, Snark provers, Stark provers, TEE-based provers. Native rollups, just like the TLDR was to me that Justin gave to me that I instantly got pilled, was like so much better to just say, okay, Ethereum is now have the consensus that the rollups are the way to go. Rollups are great to have. Let's provide them with the data availability. Let's give them better data so the gas fees on them comes lower. Why not provide them more things from the base layer so it would be easier to run these rollups? Native rollups were just kind of like the no-brainer. Let's just provide the state proofs from the L1 itself so they don't have to really sweat to provide these proving systems or kind of like create like things that might be so far from each other. That's why we're supportive of this native rollup effort as well. And of course, once maybe this year or within the next year, they come to fruition, we can get there. What I want to conclude in is if we actually continue to creating these standards and using them, then we would finally stop selling infrastructure to the normal day-to-day users that are getting onboarded, to the next institution that is coming to come this entire big world computer called Ethereum. We can then start actually showing the true value of it. That's why like these standardization efforts are pretty big. We're open to work with more teams actually on these as well. Like if anyone is interested in working on base rollups to be able to get there. Of course, we do not want to forget the main, also like the effort of like L1 scaling itself, but I'm sure like there are a lot of teams that are currently working on it. Thank you all.
Thank you, Amir. And we are at 1:30, so for those who need to leave, feel free to jump. But we still have 3 more speakers coming up. We're almost done. We have Demi, Sam, and Vitalik. A couple of things that stood out for me from what you said, Amir. One of them is the real-time proving. One of the unique unlocks of shared sequencing is that eventually, we can have synchronous composability, and we need this real-time proving. But what if we use TEEs to give us real-time proving today, as opposed to having to wait for snarks? And the approach that Puffer has, makes a ton of sense to me, where basically they have multiple vendors. They have Intel, AMD, and Amazon, something like that. And then if it's a 3 out of 3 setup, then it's extremely robust. Another thing that I came to mind when you said your story is that a story that I have with Puffer is that several years ago they implemented one of my research posts, and that was a unique moment for me, and I'm really pleased that this research over the years is finally starting to enter production. Amir, thank you so much for speaking. Next up, we have Demi Brenner from Open Zeppelin.
Hi, Justin. Thank you, Andrew, for organizing this and inviting us to participate. For the sake of time, I'll make this short and sweet. Our mission at Open Zeppelin is to grow and protect the open economy. And we see base rollups as a promising path to scale Ethereum and onboard billions of users, and doing it in a way that maintains some of Ethereum's most important properties, including liveness, decentralization, and censorship resistance. And also, by the way, solving Ethereum's fragmentation problem without EL2s. So in line with our mission, we we at Open Zeppelin, we want to be an active, neutral player on accelerating the adoption of base rollups by developing common standards and infrastructure, similar to what we did with the Open Zeppelin contracts library, where it was a community effort back in 2017 that got started to standardize common patterns on smart contracts. Today, there's over $20 trillion of value transacted on Open Zeppelin deployed contracts. So we want to help in that direction, also leveraging our experience working with many L2s, many of whom I see here, on helping develop their technologies and also auditing them on the security front. So as part of this, also as Daniel from Taiko mentioned earlier, we're happy to be partnering with Taiko to design and create the next generation base stack with the goal of accelerating the development and adoption of base rollups and benefiting also the whole ecosystem. We're also at Open Zeppelin supportive of the Fabric efforts, and we're very looking forward to contributing with resources and research and collaborating with multiple teams here on making this happen.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Damian. And I think the way that Open Zeppelin got pilled on based sequencing is through one of its employees, Gustavo. It only takes one person to inject a virus internally and infect a whole organization, and it's fantastic to see that we have such a respected and neutral brand like Open Zeppelin join the game and help build all of the infrastructure that needs to get built. Thank you so much, Damian, for your message. Next up, we have Sam, and that will be the last speaker in part 2 of this call.
Thanks, Justin.
Sam, the floor is yours.
Appreciate it. Hey, folks, pleasure to be here. I'll make this quick. I know you're all patiently waiting to hear from the big dog. So I'm Sam, a co-founder at Rise. If you're not familiar with us, Rise is a high-performance-based layer 2. And along with it, we're building an open source based stack. We're super pragmatic, hyper-focused on delivering high-quality product to users. And the reason I'm mentioning that is I'm very confident we can do that with a base stack. The base can reach feature parity with centralized sequencing. Something that's unique about us is that we're building a very, very fast chain. We're looking at multiple gigagas is what we're targeting, but doing it while delivering low latency preconfirmations and employing base sequencing. We'll have an OP compatible stack. Sorry, we're building an OP compatible stack that's essentially juiced up on RETH. We will have a base L2 MVP live in the next 2 months is the target. And it's OP stack plus RETH. Now I just want to talk about Fabric a little bit. So in the way I see it, there's kind of 2 directions base sequencing can go, the ecosystem. Direction 1 is that it looks like the early American railway, where there is little standardizations between regions, which adds a lot of friction to the transport, to transport out the intersections of these standards. And then there's direction 2, where there is appropriate standardization. I'm very much against over standardization, but here it's absolutely critical, where developers don't have to build adapters for every based cluster they want to integrate with. And now this isn't just application developers building interop. It's also throughout the PBS pipeline and RPC providers, gateway builder, relay. There's lots of spots where we need to have APIs. Standards. And now there's a sparse collection of teams who are aligned and agree with direction 2. In fact, they agree that it's very important because of the strong network effects it unlocks. And these teams have been making progress over the past 12 months, not 2 years. Through that effort, we've designed a constraints API standard, preconfirmations, and some teams have been doing some great work like Spire and Nethermind on blob sharing. But in my opinion, the 2 biggest challenges we've faced in trying to pull this off is coordination and credibility. There's a lot of teams working on this, and coordination is just a big job. JD's been doing a great job of it, along with Drew. But I'm really excited for Fabric because it's just more. It's really taken a lead with it. And then the credibility front, just the signaling from Ethereum that this is really the direction scaling is going is going to be huge to pull this off. It's going to attract more builders to contribute to this. So yeah, Fabric's going to be super well positioned to deliver on this. So yeah, speaking today to share my support for Fabric. I think it's an important piece, and yeah, I'm quietly impatient. I think we're getting stuff done, but I think we could get it done faster. And that's why I'm particularly excited about Fabric, that's going to make that happen. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much, Sam. One of the unique things about Rise is that it's a based Validium. It's one of the few that's not actually a base rollup. It's using AltDA, and that gives them the opportunity to have an enormous TPS. And one question that I asked, very often is base sequencing incompatible with high TPS? And the answer is definitely no. And the reason is that it's not going to be the validators on their Raspberry Pi doing the sequencing. It's going to be sophisticated entities in the MEV pipeline. Think the block builders, the searchers, the gateways, the relays. These are the entities that are going to be doing the heavy duty processing, and all the validator has to do is just sign a simple message over a tiny block header, and under the hood there's like potentially millions of TPS that is happening. So yeah, Sam, thank you so much for speaking to Rise being this high performance based L2. This concludes our second part on infra, and now we have a closing presentation from Vitalik, who will talk about an idea to use based and native rollups to help fund public goods. Vitalik, the floor is yours.
Yes, hello, thank you guys. So it's amazing to see all of this interest and all of this willingness to work together on sequencing and interoperability and security and all of these really important topics that are the key to the next step in Ethereum scaling. I think one of the other things that is also important to continue to talk about and improve on is economics, and this is also one of those things that I mentioned in my post yesterday. And I think the thing that I mentioned more of in the post is the economics of ETH, and basically making sure that ETH as an asset continues to function and continues to thrive under a variety of different scenarios for how value accrual happens. But another part of this is the public goods funding side of things. So the reason why I think this topic is important is that our ecosystem ultimately thrives on open source. It thrives on open research, and it thrives on people and businesses acting in ways that are pro-social in various ways. And it's valuable to sometimes have explicit incentives to doing some of those things, so that people who work on public goods work, open source projects, open standards, improving security, public information and education, and all of these kinds of topics are not just relying on either themselves being fully altruistic volunteers or funding from some centralized entity, but there's some kind of very stable and reliable ecosystem-wide approach to funding this kind of work. And I know that many L2s have already made pledges to donate something like whether 1% or a slightly higher percent of either tokens or fees to Protocol Guild. And I think this is amazing, and a big shout out to all of the L2s that have done that. One of my personal priorities for this year will be trying to expand the public goods funding space to beyond that. So Protocol Guild is very good at what it does, but L1 protocol development is not the only problem. There's also the challenges around building cross layer 2 infrastructure. There's challenges around building even more like general purpose open source software. There's all kinds of different areas of work, whether it's development research or something else, that are important to Ethereum's ongoing growth, especially as we shift from being just an infrastructure-focused ecosystem to also being an application-focused ecosystem, and having more mechanisms that are focused on things that go beyond the existing protocol guild, and having some like long-term commitments to fund those things would be extremely valuable. And so the way that I personally think about this is that I think we do not want to over-enshrine one single mechanism because mechanisms change. We've been through quadratic funding, we've been through retro funding, we've now doing deep funding, potentially doing other forms of funding as well. And I think it would be valuable to try to make a pledge in the abstract to use some portion of funding to support any Ethereum ecosystem of funding for public open source work through mechanisms that specifically try to not over-empower like one closed and centralized group. And I think that's the category that things like whether Protocol Guild or Retro PGF or Gitcoin have all strived for. And I think what could be interesting is to see some substantial number of L2s like make a similar pledge to that general category. And I think over time, like as an ecosystem, we should be supporting a plurality of different mechanisms, right? Because the more mechanisms get supported, the less the chance that there is someone doing extremely important work. This sort of archetypal developer in the middle of Nebraska who's doing some uncompensated thing that actually our ecosystem depends on, that just gets passed by completely. And so if we can start having an ecosystem that spreads out value across a collection of these different mechanisms and be willing to stay within that spirit but improve over time, then this is something that can also be really valuable to Ethereum. Thank you.
Thank you, Vitalik. I guess one thing that comes to mind is that we have some L2s that have this notion of public goods funding. One of them, of course, is Optimism, that has donated many tens of millions of dollars to the wider ecosystem. I just learned a few days ago that there's another project, Status Network, that is looking to launch an L2 with a treasury that will fund public goods. And I guess we'd like to spread that vibe to the broader ecosystem.
Oh, is that Status like the messaging app or a different one?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah, so they actually Namechain, Linnea, and Status all came to Cambridge, where I happened to be, and we had this 3-day workshop, which was super productive. And yeah, I agree that there needs to be more innovation on the mechanisms for public goods funding. And one of the things I'm particularly excited is to potentially use AI as a credibly neutral mechanism, if you will, that doesn't involve too many humans to make a lot of the decisions. And I know that there's projects like AI16Z that is very much thinking in that direction. And I know that folks from the Ethereum Foundation are talking about that as well. Yes, deep funding, exactly. This concludes our marathon call over an hour and a half. What I'd like to do is, if you are a YouTube viewer and you made it this far and you'd like to contribute, whether you are a builder, an educator, a coordinator, a researcher, whatever it is, do please reach out. I'm Justin Drake, all lowercase, on Telegram. You can also reach out to a plurality of other coordinators like Drew. Yeah, the future is super bright. Thank you so much for all of the speakers for coming, and see you soon. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye, guys.
Everyone.
Thanks, Justin.